Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the series where we teach the basics of Java. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about methods. In the last episode, we talked about classes and objects. And if you haven't already, make sure you watch that previous episode before coming to this episode, as this episode continues on what you've learned in the past episode, and it's vital you do so. Now, before we begin this video, please subscribe to the channel and also comment down below if you have any feedback on the tutorials I've been doing so far, how I should improve. Is there anything else you'd like to see? Just feel free to let me know and I'll try my best to cover it. Now, let's get into the meat of the lesson today, which is method. So what exactly is a method? A method is kind of like any function that adds action or behavior to your class. It allows the object to perform certain actions and it basically allows the object to perform certain actions. So, for example, let's suppose we have a bank account class. Suppose that, or savings account. Suppose that someone wants to deposit money into their savings account. That's an action. And every action has a function. So we will have to code that function, which is known as a method in Java, in order to perform that action. Suppose you want to withdraw money. Same thing. We need to have a set of steps to take in order to, tell the object how to in order to tell the object, tell the program how to exactly to withdraw money from the bank account. If we want to check balance, we have to add methods to the class as well. Basically, anything that requires some sort of functionality or action is going to be done so using a method. So let's go ahead and review everything about this class. So public class savings account, we have our instance variables or characteristics that best describe the class, and we have a constructor. Note, a constructor is a special type of method. It does do an action. However, the action it is doing is creating the object. In the constructor, we have public, which means other classes can access it. Savings account. It's very important that the constructor's name matches the name of the class and the name of the file. Next, we have a parentheses, and inside we have parameters. So if we want to set an initial balance when creating the object, we simply pass a number through these parentheses. And then what will happen is that this variable will be assigned to the instance variable over here, and we can later manipulate this using methods. So once we have these basics down, we go to the main method where we create objects and execute the code. So far, we've created an object of savings of type savings account, and we've decided to input a value or an argument of 2,000, which is representing the initial balance in the bank account, because 2,000 gets assigned to this variable, which then gets assigned to balance, and then that has value now. Now that carries a value. So let's suppose we want to add a let's think about this deposit function. How do we do that? Well, in order to deposit money, we'd first need to take input from the user and then add that to our total balance. So how do we do that? Well, we can do so using the following. Now, there are two types of methods in Java. The first type of method has no return value, and the second type of method has a return value. So let's go ahead and start off with methods that do not have return values. So first, we're going to type public void, and then the name of the method, which is deposit. And we're going to input our brackets here and then put our curly braces here. Basically, what this method is saying is void means no return. So we don't expect to get a value out of this method. Now, what exactly does return mean? Return means that after you call a method, it will give you some value which you can later assign to a variable in the main method. So this is the following basic declaration when you're trying to create a method. Now, we want input because we need to know how much to deposit. So we're going to say int, let's call it input. Now, just like the constructor, we can use this input over here and we can basically reassign it to balance, but we're not reassigning it to balance, we're adding it to balance. So let's go ahead and say balance equals balance plus input. So all this is doing is that we're essentially, if we were to call a method and we were to pass in an argument of, let's say, 500, we're going to add 500 to whatever the value of balance is here. No, before you can use methods, you must create an object of that class first. Otherwise, these fields won't be defined, and you need an object in order to call a method. Keep that in mind. So let's suppose we want to check our balance. So let's do another method. Public void check val. Now, to check our balance, we just have to print this. To check our balance, we just have to print this variable. So all we're gonna do is the following: system.out.println balance. Now that we have two basic methods, we can go ahead and use them in the main method. Main method is kind of where you create objects and run your code and check the methods you created in the savings account class. Now, how do we access methods? We first create an object of that class of which you're trying to access the methods from. Then we'll go ahead and say the object name dot, which is a reference operator, the method. So suppose we want to deposit money, we'll say dot the method name deposit, and it's asking us for some sort of input, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and say 500. Now let's go ahead and do savings dot check val. So so this program should work. We're gonna compile it. Oh, and as you can see, it'll print 2,500. Now let's go walk through this step by step. First, we create the savings account object. Then we deposit 500 extra dollars into it. So what happens in this thing is just like the constructor, 500 gets assigned to the value input, and balance gets updated so that input is added to balance. Then we say savings account dot check bal, which simply just prints out the balance. Now, let's try and do a method that has a return type. So look at line 15, for instance. Let's suppose that we don't want to return, we don't want to print out balance, but we want to return it. So let's go ahead and change that. Balance is of type int. So we'll go ahead and say public int check val. Now, since it's not void, we must return something. So we're going to simply, instead of printing balance, we're going to return balance. Now what this method does is that when we call it, it's expecting that we return an integer of some sort, and we're going to return whatever the value of balance is. Now, when we go to line 26, this line, all it's going to do is that if we call savings.checkVal, it's going to return 2,500, but it won't print it. So how can we print it? Well, we'll go ahead and do the following: system.out.println savings.checkVal. All this is doing is returning the value 2,500 and then printing it. So as you can see, this should achieve the same. Oh shit, one sec. This should basically achieve the same result as we did with the void method. So this is the basics on how to use methods. So all we did was that there are two types. There's void and there's ones that have return values. So you can make this double char string, and you just have to return a value of that type. And once you return a value, you have to assign it to some variable or do something with it, like print it out. Otherwise, it's practically useless. But this is the basics of creating methods. I hope you understand how to create methods now. And thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care.